Thank you for staying with us on TVC Breakfast. Now, let's talk about another issue now. Well, for any society to thrive, transportation is one of the key factors because it is pivotal to the economy. Despite Lagos being the mega city of Nigeria due to its large number of businesses and production, traffic has become a typical phenomenon. And due to this problem, many people opt for a faster means of transportation, which is the motorcycles, popularly called Okada. Unfortunately, this means of transportation, despite being good, has done a lot of harm in the society. Because of its small size and fast nature, the number of pickpockets, thefts, and robberies have increased. Although the Lagos state government has banned Okada riders on some roads several times, they still tend to be well established in the state, constituting a menace in the society. And that's what we'll be discussing this morning. Joining me in the studio is the MD Safety Signatures, Cynthia Gregg. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you indeed.
Yes.
Also lawyer Ahmed Abbas. Welcome to TVC Breakfast this morning.
Thank you.
And all right, let me start with you, Dr. Gregg. Reports say that there are more than 3 million bikes in the state, and that many of them are actually came from the north, and that many of them are criminals who are waiting for the right time to strike. Being a security practitioner, what information can you share with us about the menace these Okada riders indeed portend to residents in the state?
Yeah, thanks for having me. But it's no news the level of menace constituted by Okada riders in time past and today. You know, the attraction of sympathy towards these people is surprising, because hardly would you see a family who has not suffered in the hands of these people. Most of the time, you see people attacking people on the street. One of the huge menace of Okada riders on citizens in Nigeria is the fact that some of the people you see operating a physical regular businesses are not actually, that they all have side hustles. And some of the side hustles of these riders, are burglary, street crime, community, uprising, and name them. So for us, I think it is the right time for Lagos State government to finally taking a decision, because again, I see it as enforcement, because the ban has always been there. It's just that from one government to the other government, there has been a lax. If you recall vividly, there was this past governor, name withheld, who began his enforcement by repatriating these people back to their cities, back to their states, But today it's been a lax, and that is why Lagos State government has come forth to begin to change the narrative.
All right, let's get some legal perspectives from this recurring issue. As rightly said and has been observed, this is not the first time the state government will issue a ban of this nature. In 2020, which recorded, COVID, and that is even what the government attributed to its failure to enforce the order it gave at the time. What would be different this time around, or what are the general observations as a lawyer to this problem?
Thank you. The issues are that we must look at why do people patronize these Okada riders. It means we have a problem in Lagos. Being a mega city, it means there's shortage of public transport, especially because of the traffic situation. So that means people are looking for faster means of traveling and doing their businesses. So what ordinarily should have been a means of generating resources and revenue for people for livelihood has actually become a problem, because those Okada riders, we've seen them, some of them are actually criminals. We've seen situations where the police found AK-47 rifle guns in their on them and things like that. And most times on the road, once there's a problem between one Okada man and probably another road user, before you realize what is happening, you see them coming in their in their numbers and constituting social menace and all the rest of them. Fine and good, but like we rightly say, from the legal perspective, the government has, in the time past, banned these Okada riders. They have the legal rights to do that, but I think the challenge we have is that there has been no strict enforcement of that, those bans, and that is why the problem has reared its ugly head again. I think this time around, the government is really serious, and we're encouraging them to actually restructure that sector, because it's not just about banning them completely, because Lagos needs a faster means, and the government can actually generate revenue from these, Okada riders if well structured. So ours is that they should structure it so that those that want to operate in that sector, the government has a database on who they are. Because that's one of the major problems. We don't know who these people are. And it is there in the public domain that most of these people are actually not Nigerians, that they are foreigners. And so that means there's a security challenge to that aspect. So the government must regulate them, see the opportunity in it, restructure that industry, and have everybody in their database. So if you want to do business in Lagos State, we must know who you are, where you come from, so that at any point in time, if there is any crime or issue in that sector, the government can really know who to hold accountable and responsible. Right.
I want to take you up on this security challenge, and the government has also, said, listening to you, government has said that many of these people, we don't know who they are, we can't track them under the LASRA, the residence registration scheme, we cannot track them. So that has, helped, some skeptics who say that that is more of a reason of the government for doing what it's doing. But to get things right at this time around under the transportation agenda of a mega city as Lagos, what do you think are the missing gaps, or are the gaps now in this issue that the government will need to address before it can be business as usual for transporters? Well,
for me, I don't see any difficulty in regulation. Regulation may be a challenge for a fact, because these people don't have addresses. Even those who have addresses are squatters. And these are people who get easily aggravated at the slightest provocation. How do you regulate a people, a group of persons who cannot communicate in a language that we all can understand? How do you regulate a people, a group of persons who are easily provoked? So the ban, I keep wondering when Okada became a means of commercial transportation. It has never been a means of commercial transportation until perhaps maybe early 90s. We have always done without, lived lives without Okada. Okada came into being as a means of transportation, private means of transportation. You could afford to buy, you cannot afford to buy a car, you buy an Okada, as a for private use, not for commercial use. So what we are advocating today is something that government has taken, a remedial measure to curtail, which is the insecurity. Even, do you know the risk you are exposed to bodily injury as a result of plying and using an Okada as a means of transportation? Can you imagine the level of carbon monoxide you consume, from the exhaust of the Okada rider? Even it's good enough to know that you can navigate, traffic gridlock in Lagos State, because Lagos State is a mega city. But in spite, the convenience are lesser, as far as I'm concerned, than the risk content, the health hazard it poses on humans, the passengers. So it is a good step in the right direction. Government has finally woken up, to the reality of the need for safety of its citizens. Nigerians, Lagosians, need to be safe in Lagos State. And one of the ways of ensuring security in Lagos State is the total ban.
All right, we've spoken about where the drivers or where the riders are concerned. Mr. Bass, what about the role or the level of responsibility now for the passengers the riders carry now? Government has provided, more clarity, so to speak, on this issue, saying that passengers will also be prosecuted. And let's also not forget that government is saying there is an existing traffic regulation in the state. And so these 6 local governments that were enumerated last week, where the total ban will take effect from, doesn't exonerate, other riders who ply other highways. So what do you make about this? Is this enough clarity for you?
Yes. Yes, the government has actually clarified that both the riders and users of the services of these Okadas, if they are arrested in banned areas, they will be held liable and But you see, from me, looking at it, I do not subscribe to the total ban of the Okada riders because Governor El-Rufai jokingly one day was saying that he doesn't know how people in Lagos survive, that in fact we should be giving automatic tickets to heaven because most times people spend 4 or 5 hours trying to navigate Lagos. And if you also, as a student of history, remember that Jakande, between 79 and 83, in trying to resolve the traffic congestion of Lagos, came out with the even number and odd number registration. It is simply to tell you that historically, traffic congestion has been more or less like a recurring decimal in Lagos. And that means we have not been able to find an innovative way of resolving the traffic congestion in Lagos. Why would people ply Okada in spite of the dangers, in spite of the hazards and all the rest of them? It simply means there's a problem that we have not been able to find a scientific solution to. For me, when the Okada was in existence, the government was trying to formalize that industry. And I think what they should go back to do is go back to the drawing board and come up with standardization. Look, once you give entry qualification, like you are saying, we actually saw a lady, an undergraduate in Poly that was riding Okada then and was using it to, fund her education. When it was banned, she cried, appealed to the government, and a benefactor, a man, a humanitarian came out and bought her a Toyota Corolla. So that means to generate employment and generate revenue for the government, that sector, when you close every day or in the morning, when you close in the night, look at our bus stops. You see the number of passengers on the road.
Mr. Abbas, yes. The government has said that there is no place for motorcycles, commercial motorcycles, in the dream of achieving a megacity in the real sense of that term.
Yes.
But so let me get you right. You don't want a total ban. You're asking for a modification.
Yes, because Lagos State has a population of about 20 million people. And to be honest, until you have an efficient public transport system.
But they are confined to streets now.
Yes.
To streets. They don't want them on the highway. So how do you still stick to your argument?
Yeah, I still stick to my argument that look, you do not like the Yorubas will say, you do not cut a head simply because you want to solve the problem of a headache. You go back and ask yourself, how do we regulate this industry? Because there's a demand. There's a demand. If you know, all the government should have done, do your research and find out the number of people that are willing to patronize these people. It's an industry, it's a sector. All you need to do is the government can generate revenue. If millions of people are patronizing a particular product, a particular service, it's to tell you there's a demand. And all you need to do is how do we regulate and ensure that those that want to make use of this thing, they make use of it and it does not constitute public nuisance. And at the same time, the government will generate revenue, you generate employment. All you need is bring in standardization. Right. Regulate the quality and the qualification of people that can enter into that industry.
All right. Okay. So Mr. Abbas is speaking for a reasonable number of residents who are, indeed really curious about how this will work, because it has never worked before. If we are going to, reason out, weighing government's rationale, and of course weighing the brunt of this kind of clampdown on road users, basically. But how do you relate with Mr. Abbas? And I'm sure many people have actually asked you this kind of question. You are saying you're all out for the total ban, but really, if we come down to it, how will it be enforced? Looking at the sheer number of people who use this mode of transportation.
Well, for me, there is no denying the fact that Okada as a means of commercial transportation could actually ease our swift movement to our destinations. But I am still looking at why we cannot achieve, this regulation process. There are other means of transportation.
Do we have enough of those means? We are
getting there, because you may have been aware of the new deployment of blue-colored buses like Korokwe, what people call Korokwe. More of these islands will be coming to Lagos State. Now, this can be useful for intrastate movement within the neighborhood, within the communities, because we've gotten used to Okada. We feel there can be an alternative. When we have these Korokways distributed into our intra-streets, intra-communities, we'll begin to see the good side of the government policy. So for me, I am calling on the LNSC to please support the Lagos police force to ensure that this, is fully implemented.
I was even getting to that, the big question about, the enforcement. How will this work as from June the 1st in these areas, for example? Now, will the bikes be seized? Will we have policemen and other security people all across, the highways within the 6 local governments? Do we have enough of these numbers? And what happens to the other areas where, according to the government, they will also be watching out for people or riders who ply the highways away from the 6 local governments that the government wants this scheme to take off from?
Well, as we have been told, this is taking effect from the 6 local government areas made up of 9 LCDAs. The first reaction is the fact that Okadas don't have businesses being on the highways. But what Lagos State government has done now is to move even into the communities so that there will be control measure. See, the blanket freedom of these riders is what has led into the loss of this sound engineer, David. If there are control, this measure, as far as I'm concerned, is to restrict their freedom. That even when the ban is eventually lifted, you are going to be seeing, these people complying and respecting their passengers. So, is within the state, within the 6 local government areas that have been listed by government already.
All right, Mr. Abbas, you have something to say. I could hear, the movements you were making, but kindly join the conversation.
Look, you said some set of people are constituting social nuisance. They are criminals. You are banning them from the highways, the urban areas. They should go and operate you are pushing them to some other areas, the hinterlands, to go and operate there. Is that how you solve a problem? If these people are actually constituting, they are criminals, are you now saying they are also free to go and operate in those areas you are living out of the ban? You don't understand me? If you say people are criminals, what I think they should interrogate is that these people, number one, they are lawless, and some of them are criminals. By allowing them to operate in some parts of your state does not solve that problem. You are simply shifting them to other areas to go and operate. A better way is, look, how do we clean up that system
But as Dr. Greg said,
yes,
it had happened at a time
yes,
in the past administrations that, the government showed some level of seriousness, in enforcing the ban in addition or in partnership with security agents. And we know that during that time, many of these commercial riders who are of a certain extraction in the country, they left. They took their bikes, and they left. And again, let's also not forget that there are other states of the Federation that have already enforced the no commercial bike ban in their states.
I don't have any problem with the government banning those that are constituting social menace and that are criminals operating in the state. I have zero tolerance for people who are criminals by nature. Once we identify them, we owe the society an obligation to surgically operate them and take them completely out of the system. But I'm also saying that, look, as a government, you must ask yourself, why are people using the services of these Okada riders? That means there's a problem of how to move within the traffic grid in Lagos. And a problem exists. It is also an opportunity, an opportunity for more standardized, bike system wherever it is. Because if you do your census, research very well, some Lagosians will tell you they would, if there's adequate public transport, fine and good. But we know, like I said, go out, look at the statistics of space utilization. Sometimes you see about 5, 6, 10, 50 cars, and you look at the passengers they are carrying. Maybe sometimes a car, one person, two persons there, and three. If you have adequate public transport system, a mass transit that can do the work of probably about 50 cars, people can move faster within the Lagos State metropolis. Fine and good. Nobody will patronize this thing. But for people to spend 3, 4, 5 hours trying to get to a place that ordinarily should not take more than 30 minutes, 1 hour, people will always find a way. So the government, I don't say they shouldn't ban, but let them go back also and look at it. Look, there's an opportunity here. Is there a way the government can actually intervene and ensure that this industry is regulated? Because the challenge is that most of these bike riders, they are illiterate, they can't communicate very well, they are lawless. Right. So if you train and retrain and retrain,
I want reactions. Yes. Even though we are running out of time, we will need to move on to other areas. But I want reactions, from you both, looking at the feedback that have emanated since this latest announcement. Looking at the Hausa or the Fulani community, a certain spokesperson has, talked about the harsh effect of this, and even gone ahead as saying that yes, they know they need to adjust themselves, so to speak, and not to run on the other side of the law. But if the government, rethinks this decision, it assures the government of its support in the forthcoming election. What do you make of that? Is this really a bargaining? Is this really something to bargain about? Or does the government needs to further engage with the larger number of residents in the state on this?
Sure, there is need for resensitization of this group of persons, but certainly not premised on the need for their votes. Because you cannot joke with the life of the citizens of your state. At the expense, you cannot pursue a political career at the expense of the lives of your citizens. So it's a no-no for me if we have to look at, such utterances as not going to vote for government when need arises. I don't think the government even needs to bother about that, because the strategies for, that can always be launched out. Now, I am bothered about, what the alternatives could be for these people. Now, a ban from 6 local government is a movement into other local government, because the ban is not total. There are states in the north that you have total ban of Okadas. And I think Lagos State government and some other states that still allow these people to operate were a bit kind of insensitive to the fact that the migration of these people from those states that were banned in the north would probably be the states in the west. in the south. And this is what has brought us to this quagmire. Then another point that was raised by the barrister is the fact that that is the fastest means of transportation. No doubt about that. But because that is the means that has been available to man. If it is not there, people will find alternatives.
Okay, so that said, let me also get Mr. Abbas's final words at this point.
No serious government should sacrifice the security and the well-being of its society on the altar of political consideration. If the government, through its agencies, arrives at a conclusion that a particular set of people are constituting social menace, it is the responsibility of the government to do everything within its power to ensure that they surgically take those set of people out of the society so that the society could be at peace. For me, it is a no-no. The government should go ahead. If they found a problem, let them take the problem out of the way of the society.
All right, Lawyer Ahmed Abbas, thank you very much for your contributions on the program. And Dr. Cynthia Gregg, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.